Six races, six Mercedes victories. Six times, the same two silver cars disappeared into the distance while the rest of the grid they watched on in quiet, creeping despair. And heading into this weekend, Barcelona, it was supposed to be the place where the real truth finally came out. Not Monaco truth, not street circuit chaos, but the real truth, because Barcelona is the ultimate Formula 1 lie detector. This is the track where the teams they bring their upgrades and they stare at the data. They can immediately find out whether they have built a rocket ship or just a very expensive toaster with carbon fiber wings. Well, the question it was very simple. Could anyone actually stop Kimi Antonelli? Because after 5 wins in a row and a massive championship lead, the 19-year-old he treated pressure like it was mild weather update. For Barcelona, it gave us one thing this championship desperately needed. Full, clean, championship shaking, punch right in the face. Because Lewis Hamilton, he finally won in Ferrari red. Kimi Antonelli, he broke down. George Russell walked away looking like a man who watched someone steal his lunch money. And Ferrari, after months of looking like they were trying to solve a Rubik's Cube in a moving elevator, finally outsmarted Mercedes on strategy? Well, welcome back to the Art of Motor Racing. This is round 7 of the 2026 World Championship. This got a whole more complicated.
Perez goes off the track, off goes Leclerc, through goes Hamilton!
Before a single car had turned a wheel at Barcelona, the paddock it kind of detonated by an absolute bombshell that reframed the entire weekend because FIA handed Pierre Gasly his Monaco podium back, something that never happens in Formula 1. During the chaos in Monaco, 5 drivers including Gasly, Hamilton, and George Russell, they were slapped with pit lane speeding penalties. Alpine, they appealed, and the Formula One's management, they had to hold its hand up and admit that the distance measurement in Monaco was completely inaccurate, causing the speeds to be overreported. Gasly's penalties, they were wiped, and he was reinstated in the third place. Beautiful story for Gasly, but an absolute nightmare for George Russell. You'll ask why? Because Russell had seen this exact train wreck coming. During the Monaco red flag period, Russell he physically walked up to the stewards and practically begged them to delay his drive-through penalty. So basically he could appeal it post-race and the time if there's a penalty it can be added and reviewed later. The stewards they refused and Mercedes told him to serve it anyway. As Russell rightfully fumed to the media in Barcelona, he said Pierre was able to salvage his result. Once you serve the penalty, there's no turning back. And he's right, there is no regulatory mechanism to undrive through the pit lane. Russell basically lost 15 championship points, podium finish, solely due to a software management error. Toto Wolff had Mercedes lawyers staring at diagrams, but the legal reality was Russell was completely hosed. Well, he arrived in Barcelona carrying pure Monaco rage. He was a man trying to rip the bad luck out of his season with both hands. From the first practice session, he drove like he had violence in his heart. Well, the practice session told you everything you needed to know. Russell topped FP1, topped FP3, and looked absolutely planted. When qualifying arrived, Q1 and Q2 brought some deeply weird energy because Fernando Alonso, in what could be his final home race at Barcelona, he ended up dead last at the back. Aston Martin, it looked completely lost. Cadillac, they were nowhere, and Williams was drowning in the midfield. Then came Q3 and Charles Leclerc, whose 2026 season seems to be written by someone with a personal vendetta, completely lost the car at the exit of turn 4. Ferrari snapped, he overcorrected, went through the gravel and buried it in the barrier. Red flags. Mechanics staring at screens like, brother, why we're like this? Leclerc was relegated to P10 with no time. When the track went green, Russell, he delivered. Metronomic cold blooded 1 minute 14.6. No luck, no yellow flag weirdness, just pure speed. But then Lewis Hamilton appeared. 41 years old in Ferrari red, Hamilton split the silver arrows, looked down, locked down the P2, finishing a mere 600ths of a second behind Russell. Antonelli was forced to settle for third, marking this the first time all season 19-year-old prodigy was knocked off the front row. And to make things even spicier, Hamilton he elected to start Sunday on soft tires, while everyone else around him they opted for medium. Ferrari they were not playing defense; they were signaling war from the jump. The lights out and the top five they held station into turn one. Russell got a perfect launch, and Hamilton used his soft rubber to cut across and squeeze Antonelli. It bought him very good breathing room in early stages of the race. Behind them, absolute chaos erupted. Isaac Hadjar, who lined up brilliant sixth, got swallowed alive off the line. His car bogged down, it dropped him near the absolute back of the pack, within the first few corners. Meanwhile, Lance Stroll's weekend, it lasted about as long as the New Year resolution lasts, parking his Aston Martin on lap 6 with a broken gearbox. But if you thought Hadjar was going to pout about his bad start, you don't know the chaos. The kid, he went on an absolute rampage, treating the outside of turn 3 like it was his own personal interstate highway. He went hunting. He passed Carlos Sainz around the outside. He passed both Alpines around the outside. It was arcade game driving in the World Championship race. He was threading the needle at the absolute limit. And up front, Russell, he looked fully in control, pulling a 3.5-second gap over Hamilton by lap 10. Hamilton's soft tires they quickly gave up, forcing him to pit early on lap 11 for hards. On paper, it looked like a standard predictable Mercedes 1-2 cruise. Well, it wasn't. Because Barcelona, it is a tire shredder, and by lap 28, tires they started talking. Ferrari, they listened. They pulled Hamilton in for a second stop, bolting on mediums and committing him to an aggressive, highly unorthodox three-stop strategy. Everyone else was nursing a standard two-stop plan. Half the internet immediately started typing, classic Ferrari disaster incoming. But Hamilton came out firing, purple sector, taking 1.5 seconds a lap out of the leading Mercedes duo. Mercedes was trapped in a tactical purgatory. React too early and you ruin your race, wait too long and Hamilton undercuts your soul. Internal panic was setting in the Mercedes pit wall, while Antonelli he was crawling back all over Russell, begging his engineers to let him unleash his pace. They told him to be patient. Then came the gift on lap 40. Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin it suffered a battery failure and coasted to halt at turn 9. Virtual safety car was deployed. The timing diabolical because Russell and Antonelli had just completed their second pit stops under green flag conditions. Hamilton was still out, meaning he got a heavily discounted free pit stop under the VSC. He pitted, slapped on fresh mediums, and re-emerged in the lead. Ferrari walked right into Mercedes' house, opened their fridge, and ate their food. They left behind a note saying grazie. Once Hamilton got into clear air with fresh rubber, he simply disappeared, pulling out a staggering 19.5-second lead. But behind him, the Mercedes garage, it turned into a psychological war zone. Because Antonelli, completely ignoring track limit warnings, hunted Russell down. Lap 61, the teenager, he lunged down the inside of turn 1, ruthlessly wrestling P2 away from his team. For 30 seconds, it felt like the kid was bulletproof. Even on a bad weekend, he found a way to beat George. And then, lap 63, the matrix broke. Antonelli's Mercedes, it suffered a catastrophic electrical shutdown. The car died, and the championship leader was forced to pull onto the grass. His first DNF of the 2026 season, as he stood stranded on the grass, aura of invincibility vanished. Because Ferrari can never allow pure joy to exist without an emotional tax, Leclerc's power steering, it also failed almost simultaneously, sending him through the gravel and into retirement. But nothing could stop the man at the front. Lewis Hamilton, he crossed the finish line to take an emotional, historic victory. Podium for Barcelona, Lewis Hamilton crossed the line first, 106th career victory, 7th win, Barcelona, the oldest Formula 1 winner since Jack Brabham in 1970. George Russell, he inherited second after brutally confusing weekend. Lando Norris, he completed the first all-British podium since Jackie Stewart, Graham Hill, John Surtees in 1968. Behind them, the Max Verstappen, he dragged an uncompetitive Red Bull to fourth, which by his standards should feel like emotional vandalism. Oscar Piastri, he secured fifth for McLaren. Isaac Hadjar completed his legendary recovery drive, finishing astonishing sixth, proving once again his driving style is just pure chaos wearing a racing helmet. Pierre Gasly, he capped off a wild weekend by finishing seventh. Franco Colapinto, he crossed the line eighth but was slapped with a post-race 10-second penalty for failing to slow for yellow flags, dropping him to 10th. That penalty gifted Liam Lawson 8th and rookie Arvid Lindblad 9th. Securement of a massive double-point finish for the Racing Bull squad. In total, 7 cars retired from the race. Barcelona, the supposed ingenious paradise, turned into a mechanical graveyard. For this weekend, Antonelli held a crushing 66-point lead. And leaving Spain, that lead shrunk to 41 points over Lewis Hamilton. Antonelli isn't in crisis, but the inevitability is gone. Worse for Mercedes, they now have a glaring reliability problem. Canada cost Russell, Barcelona cost Antonelli. That's 2 mechanical failures in 3 race weekends. Toto Wolff, he called Barcelona a useless race. And you just know that he's staring at power unit blueprints at 3 a.m. whispering very expensive German swear words under his breath. This wasn't lucky inherited win for Maranello. Ferrari bought upgrades, bought pace, and straight up out-schemed Mercedes on merit. Lando Norris even remarked after the race that if Ferrari can sort out their power unit reliability, they could embarrass everyone. This is the moment Lewis Hamilton truly became Ferrari. It's no longer a PR stunt or an awkward transition phase. The defining moment has landed. Confident Lewis Hamilton in a very fast Ferrari is the most dangerous apex predator in motorsports history. Well, the coronation for Kimi Antonelli is officially cancelled. Have ourselves a title fight. Australia is up next, Red Bull Ring, Max Verstappen's backyard. Ladies, they need reliability. Russell needs an uninterrupted win. Antonelli, he needs to prove he's still bulletproof. Hamilton, spilling blood in the water. What do you think? Is Hamilton a legitimate threat for the 2026 title? Or was Barcelona just a perfect alignment of stars for Ferrari? Let me know in the comments below. Smash that subscribe button and hit the bell. And we'll see you at the Red Bull Ring.